Solitude and silence. Don't those two words sound wonderful? They speak of rest and relaxation, of peace, quiet and calm, away from the stress and busyness of everyday life. Who wouldn't want a bit of that? And yet when we actually try it, solitude and silence can seem more like loneliness and laziness because we naturally want to be busy and get things done. There's work to be done, money to earn, bills to be paid, people to see and spend time with. How then can we possibly afford to sit around doing nothing? In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus addressed this very issue, busyness being just as much of a problem in the first century as the 21st. He pointed to the way people who don't know God spend all their time chasing around after food and clothing and such like. God's people, however, should be different because we trust God to provide us with all we need. Jesus ends with the well-known command, seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. By His kingdom and righteousness, Jesus is referring to God's rule in our lives, with Him being the one that we love and serve and live for. And this can only come through our relationship with God. Times of solitude and silence then are not simply a chance to get away from things and chill out for a bit, but they provide us with a wonderful opportunity to grow in our relationship with God. Think about some of those in the Bible who benefited from solitude and silence. Moses, for example, who had to flee Egypt and ended up looking after sheep for 40 years. Or Elijah, who fled the wrath of Queen Jezebel, ending up in a cave, believing he was the only man of God left. Solitude and silence were so necessary for these men that God practically drove them to it. And yet without it, would Moses have ever been ready to lead the Israelites out of Egypt? Would Elijah have had the courage to confront the king? During their times of solitude and silence, these men met with God, and it transformed their lives. No relationship can ever get beyond a superficial level without those involved spending quality, intimate time together. And this includes our relationship with God. This is the purpose of spending time in solitude and silence, spending intimate, quality time with God. And since we get to know God through the Bible and by speaking with Him, solitude and silence often go hand in hand with the disciplines of Bible study and prayer. As with all spiritual discipline, it is going to need a bit of planning. Most of us don't accidentally find ourselves stumbling into solitude and silence. We need to find a quiet location and decide on a time. Now, the location could be anywhere, your bedroom, car, shed, an old church building, basically anywhere you can be quiet and still without fear of interruption or distraction. As for the time, this is where it tends to get a bit tricky. Is there really a time when I could just stop? And how long do I need to take away from all the things that I should be getting on with? Only you can answer these questions for yourself. But it is worth bearing in mind that every day we have 1,440 minutes at our disposal to do with as we see fit. Now, we could write off 2/3 of that immediately on sleep and work, but what about the rest? What would be a suitable percentage to devote to God? After all, even 30 minutes is less than 7% of that spare third of a day. Practicing solitude and silence takes planning, sacrifice and dedication, actively deciding to trust God with all those things that we feel we should be rushing around doing, so that we can then take out time to be with Him. At first, these times will feel strange and maybe even pointless, but eventually these intimate times with God will really start to make a difference to your relationship with Him. And like Moses and Elijah, it will transform your life. The question is not, can I afford to spend time in solitude and silence, but can I afford not to?